apologies, my boyfriend rudely interrupted. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off the side road and back onto a better lit road with the sparse traffic. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk, he didn't look high. He looked completely and utterly insane. And that's a very, very scary thing to see. Okay, I kind of wish that ended a little, like, maybe he scratched or something, I don't know. Okay, still scary if that happened. I'm acting like if that happened to me, I wouldn't shut up about it, so fair dues. Okay, this one's a bit longer, so prepare yourself. This is in the r/no sleep Reddit thread, and it's called, Has Your Husband Been Standing Still? Okay, let's get a little drink before we start this one. Okay. The woman, okay, let's really get set up. Okay. The woman at the door said her husband was inside my home. She was agitated and ran her fingers through her unwashed hair. Okay, was he trying to clock her there? What the hell? You have the wrong address. It's just me, I said, then lied. And my boyfriend is here. No, please just listen to me, she said, placing a hand on the door frame and leaning in toward me. I said I couldn't help her. Said again she had the wrong address, then shut the door, but I could still hear her. I don't know what he'll do. Let me in, let me find him, she said. Her muffled voice sharpened while her palm drummed on the door. He stands still. Honestly, I'm being so for real. I do not know what I would do because I don't want to fuck with any type of whatever is going on, but like also it could just be a crazy lady. I don't know. I froze in that entryway and waited full minutes after it sounded like she had left, in case her ear was pressed to the door. I didn't give much thought to her husband at first. There was something off about her, how she tried to talk so calmly, even though it was obvious she was coiled tight enough to snap. She kept floating on her toes, looking into my apartment behind me, but she also didn't seem outcast or even neglected, really. Her cashmere sweater and tapered pants told a different story. So I searched my apartment with the crowbar I kept under the sheets in the linen closet. No one was in the front rooms, with their windows facing the street. I had been there all day, so it was impossible for anyone to have broken in that way. Then I remembered the old dumbwaiter shaft. It was behind the kitchen door, shut behind a hinged metal slab. To keep noise from bleeding between apartments, it was no longer an open shaft, but a dusty compartment used as a pass-through for cables. I brought along my biggest chef knife from the drawer across spaces they slide over. Go away, I screamed before retreating to the farthest corner of my apartment, away from the front door. It took me a while to calm down with some TV and all the lights on. I didn't pay attention to the show, but I told myself that the woman at the door had a mental illness and a persecution complex, and she wanted to pull me into her delusion. I crept to the window and peered into the park across the street from my house. It was small and mostly mown, with a picnic pavilion and a swing set. But right across from me was a shock of a forest, rising up, curling, and unwanted. The sun was still up, but low enough for the thicket to be dark in its own shadows. I looked for her there, expecting I don't know what, 2 red eyes. I didn't see her and opened the blinds fully. A few families were playing volleyball down at the farthest end of the park, but it was otherwise empty. Then I caught the blue light of an e-cig. It was her, seated in a shadowed beach chair, with her legs stacked casually in front of her. I could barely see her face, but it looked as if she was staring into my windows. I debated whether to go down to confront her, but when I turned around, I saw her husband. I didn't scream. My throat snapped shut on my breath. Through the kitchen doorway across the room, I could see my dishwasher and him standing next to it, one leg against the fridge. He wasn't standing straight, but bent forward at a right angle, his back aligned with the marble countertop. One arm was held, pinned against his thigh, the other down, then the wrist up, with fingers out in odd angles. His face pointed forward, aligned atop his body like a bullet on a shell casing. With his eyes aimed to one side of me and far away, he wore an expression of a rapture on a pale face. His lips were glittering red. He didn't move or react and showed no signs of being detected, but I still expected those eyes to swivel and land on me. Didn't feel I could move or look away until it did. I forced myself to clap, then to wave my arms, but there was no reaction. "You," I said. "Sir, you need to leave." He didn't react. Sorry, I was looking for my powder puff. He didn't react, and it was just as if he was ignoring me. There wasn't a tremor or breath. He stayed so still. It was as if the whole world had frozen. I called 911, of course. The operator urged me to get out of the house as quickly as possible. I stayed on the line with the operator, but there was nothing left to say. My only way out was past him. Acid filled my stomach. There was no way I could cross that room. I considered tossing something at him or attacking him, but there was nothing more dangerous than a TV remote nearby. The operator said something about officers on the way, and my phone slipped from my hand in my rush to bring it back to my ear. My eyes never dropped from the husband, who didn't flinch when my phone crunched on impact, then clattered across the floor and under the couch. I lowered myself to my hands and knees and considered crawling over and reaching under until I realized it would put him out of sight. It was better to escape, maybe crawl by him without touching him, and he'll stay frozen, or would he just grab me when I got close? I didn't have a choice. At the threshold between hardwood and tile, I looked down at my hands on the floor, and when I looked up, he was gone. But it was only for an instant, because suddenly I could see him again, just in front of me. He hadn't moved. My eyes had let him go and struggled to find him again, like he wasn't where I had expected, or if I had somehow forgotten him. The arms holding me up shook so violently that I pinched so I'll call her Flora. I'll teach you to see him, was the first thing Flora told me once I was able to listen. I didn't want to see him or to go anywhere with this person, but I didn't know what else to do. She drove me far outside of the city until I could see the stars over a sprawling suburbia. Somewhere near the highway where duplex condos faded into industrial parks. She turned into a multi-acre construction site. It was all blonde dirt, scraped and marked by bulldozer treads. At the center was a cinder block frame that might one day grow into a big box store. She turned off her headlights, and suddenly the feeling I had ignored in favor of her serene understanding of my situation could no longer be ignored. I was struck, dumb with fear, my sore muscles protesting at being called back to alert. Had I met a couple working together? But she kept talking reasonably, kept her instructions simple, and I found no moment to protest. Instead, I followed her, even let her take me by the hand and pull me in a circuitous path out into the center of the standing blocks. She laid out a picnic blanket and urged me to lay on my back next to her with a friendly pat. Inside, I was screaming. We're in the middle of one of those dimmer meteor showers that doesn't get headlines, she said, but we can see one every few minutes if we know how to look. Men who stand still, she told me, can't be searched out like a bird among branches or a face in a crowd. That is a search for specificity. Even if you could live in a state of constant scrutiny, where every pixel of reality is examined, you would not often find these unmoving men. They slip into your scotoma and escape your attention because they are no longer objects to be found. There was one, she said, pointing to the part of the sky. Did you see that one? I hadn't. Because you were darting around, looking for shooting stars, she said, instead of looking at the surface of reality. Her husband had receded into the sky of our day-to-day existence, she said. When standing still, he wasn't an object to be found in space, but had shut down every part of himself to become permanent. She taught me to make my eyes flat and to search with an idea of what I wanted to see. To see them, you can no longer want anything from the sky. She said, you have to deaden yourself to know what surrounds you. I laughed when I saw the first shooting star and forgot about my terrible day. Then there was another and another. Now please, please don't be afraid, she said, sitting up and placing her hand on my goose-pimpled forearm. I looked around with my meteor eyes. There were men standing in strange shapes pressed against the cinder blocks and standing in the mud at bent angles, and even across the street holding themselves straight. I see them everywhere now, she whispered. There are so many of them standing still. That is, unfortunately, the end of the story. I did not know it ended in a cliffhanger. I wanted to know how she got the guy out of her house. I apologize for that. That was quite a long story with no ending. The next one is a bit long as well, but this one does have an ending, so hopefully this one's a bit more well-rounded. Hopefully you're getting tingles at the very least. I'm going to adjust my seating position and begin the next one, which is called, it's also in the r/no sleep thread, and it's called Something Walks Whistling Past My House Every Night at 3:03. Okay, one moment. I'm back. I just wanted to get a little bit more comfy for this one because it's also a long read. this was a good place to grow up. I'm old enough to see it. And there's only two strange things here. The night whistling and the good luck. Okay, let's turn a little bit. The whistling never bothered me much. Like I said, I couldn't even hear it from my bedroom. But my mom and dad don't like talking about it, so I've stopped asking questions. My dad is a strong guy, tall and calm. He has an accent since he moved to the US as a kid. His family and grandparents, they're from the islands, and that's what they call it. My dad, the only time he isn't so calm is if the whistler comes up. He talks a little quicker, then eyes move faster, and he tells us not to think about it so much and to always remember one rule, the big rule. Don't try to look outside when the whistler goes past. Not that we could even look if we wanted to. See, there are shutters on the inside of every window, thick pieces of heavy canvas that pull down from the top and latch to the bottom of the window frame. Each latch even has a small lock, and about the size of what you'd find on a diary. My dad locks those shutters every night before we all go to bed and keeps the key in his room. My mom, I don't know what she thinks about the whistling. I've seen her out in the living room before at 3:03 when the sound starts. I could see if I cracked my door open just an inch to peek. She's not out there often. At least I haven't caught her much. But once or twice a month, I think she sits out there on our big red couch just listening. The whistler has the same tune every night. It's cheerful. Da-da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-da-dum. Remember how I said there are two odd things about where I live? Well, besides our night whistler, everyone in my neighborhood is really lucky. It's hard to explain, and my dad doesn't like us talking about this part much either, but good things just seem to happen to people around here. Usually it's small things like winning a radio contest, or getting an unexpected promotion at work, or finding some arrowheads buried in the yard. You know, the authentic kind. The weather is pretty good, and there's no crime, and everyone's gardens bloom extra bright in the fall. A million little blessings I've heard my mom say about living here. But the main reason we stay here, why we moved here in the first place, is my sister Nola. She was born very sick, something with her lungs. We couldn't even bring her home when she was born. Only visit her in the hospital. She was so small. I remember small even compared to the other babies. A machine had to breathe for her. We moved into our house here to be closer to the hospital. Why did I open my eyes up? I was like, to move to the hospital. As soon as we moved here, Nala started getting better. The doctors couldn't figure it out. They all chalked it up to whatever they were doing, but we all could tell they were confused. But my parents knew, even I knew, Nala getting better was just another of the million little blessings we got for living in our neighborhood. So that's why we stayed here, even after we found out that for every small miracle that happens here every day, now and then, some bad things happen. But they only happen if you look for the whistler. See, our neighborhood has a welcoming committee. They show up with macaroni casserole and a gift basket and a manila folder whenever someone new moves in. They're very friendly. 4 people showed up when we moved in 7 years ago. The committee made small talk and gave me a Snickers bar and took turns holding Nala. It was her first week out of hospital, so they were extra cheerful. Then the committee asked to speak to my parents in private, so I was sent to my room, where I still managed to hear nearly every word. The welcoming committee told my parents about how nice the neighborhood was. Really exceptionally hard to explain, kind of nice. And then they told my parents about the even harder to explain whistling that happened every morning at 3:03 and ended at the tick of 3:05. The group, our new neighbors, warned my parents that the whistling was quiet. us as long as we didn't look for what was making the sound. Not everyone dies, I heard the head of the committee tell my dad, but life goes on. Life goes out of them. Even if they live, there's no light in them ever again. No presence. My mom, I could tell she wasn't taking it seriously. She kept asking if this was some prank they played on the new neighbors. At one point, my mom got angry, accused the committee of trying to scare us out of our new home, asked them if they were racist on account of my dad being from the islands. My dad calmed her down and told her he could tell our new neighbors were sincere and they were just trying to help us. He explained that he grew up hearing these kinds of stories from his mom and that he knew there were strange things that walked among us. Some of those strange things were good and some were bad, but most were just different. After the committee left, Dad went out to the hardware store, bought the canvas blinds, the latches, and the locks, and installed them on every window in the house after dinner. That first night in our new house, I crept out of my room at 3 a.m., only to find my dad awake, sitting on the living room couch, holding my baby sister. My dad held his finger in a shh motion, but patted the couch next to him. I sat and we waited. At exactly 3:03, we heard the whistling. Da-da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-da-dum. It came and it went just like our neighbor said. The whistling returns each night and we never look and enjoy our million little blessings every day. Nala breathes on her own and she's grown into a strong, clever girl. My dad even joined the welcoming committee. We don't get new neighbors often. Why would anyone want to leave? But when a new family moves in, my dad and the committee brings them macaroni casserole, a gift basket, and the manila folder. I can always tell by the look on my dad's face when he comes back if the family took the committee seriously or if we'd be getting new neighbors again very soon. Not long ago, a family moved in directly next to us. The previous owner, Miss Maddie, passed away at the age of 105. She lived a good, long life. Our new neighbors seemed like they fit in just fine. They believed the welcoming committee, took my dad's advice about locking the shutters since they had a young child of their own. Whatever newspaper clippings were in that manila envelope, whatever evidence, my dad never let us see. But I imagine it must have been awfully convincing since our new neighbors got along with no issues for the first month. One night, when our neighbors had to leave town, they sent their son, Holden, to stay with us. He was 12, a year under me in school. I didn't know him well before that night, but as soon as his parents dropped him off after dinner, I could tell it was going to be a bad time. Do you know who's always out there whistling every night? Holden asked the moment the adults left the room. The three of us were sitting in the den. Some Disney movie played idly on the television. My sister and I exchanged a glance. We don't talk about that. The three of us were sitting in the... Oh, sorry. I already read that. I think it's that weirdo that lives in the big yellow house on the corner, Holden said. Mr. Doles, my sister asked. No way. He's really nice. Holden shrugged. Must be a psycho killer then. Nala tensed. We don't talk about it, I repeated. Let's go into my room and play Nintendo. We spent the next few hours playing games, eating popcorn, and watching movies, a typical sleepover, but I could see Holden was getting angsty. After my parents had wished us goodnight, locked the blinds, and gone to bed, Holden stood up from his beanbag and walked over to where Nala and I were sitting on my bed. Have you ever tried looking? He asked. It's nearly time. Like most sleepovers, we'd conveniently ignored any suggestion of bedtime. I was shocked to see he was right. It was almost 3 a.m. I sighed. We don't. See, I can't even try to look because my dad locks the blinds every night and hides the key. He continued ignoring me. So does our dad, said Nala. No, replied Holden. No, he doesn't. I saw him do it, I said, a little sharper than I meant to sound. Holden grinned. Your dad locks the blinds, yeah, but he doesn't hide the key. He keeps it right on his normal chain. So, I asked, worried I already knew what he would say next because I hadn't noticed that my dad didn't bother hiding the key anymore after all these years because he knew we took it seriously. So after your dad locked up before your parents went to bed, I went to the bathroom, and on my way, I may have peeked into their room, and I may have seen your dad's keychain on the nightstand, and I maybe went and borrowed the key to the blinds. Nala and I stared, and his grin only grew wider. You're lying, I said. Holden shrugged. You could check if you want. Just open your parents' door, and look, you'll see his keychain right there on the nightstand. Stay here, I told both of them. Don't move a muscle. I hurried over to my parents' room, but hesitated at the door. If Holden was lying, my dad would be angry. Wasn't lying, my dad would be angry. Beyond angry. I was scared thinking about it, but more scared of an open window with the whistler right outside. I opened the door barely an inch and looked in, but it was too dark to see. Taking a deep breath, I walked into the room. 2 steps into the dark, I froze. The whistling started, and I could hear it clearly from my parents' room. I never realized, but they must have heard the sound every night since we moved into the house. They never told us. I don't think I could have slept through it. I stood there listening to the whistling come closer, unsure whether I should turn on a light or call out for my dad. Soft sounds from the living room brought me back to reality. Nala, I yelled, running out of my parents' room. Holden and Nala were standing near the front door next to the window. Holden wasn't lying. I could see him fumbling with the lock on one of the blinds. I heard a click. He did have the key. Holden let out a quick laugh. Nala stood next to him, hunched up, afraid but maybe curious. The whistling was right outside of her house now. I think I made a sound, called out. I can't remember. Time felt frozen. Clock hands nailed to the face. But I found myself moving. I'm not fast. I've never been athletic. Somehow, though, I covered the space between myself and Nala in a moment. My eyes were locked on her, but I heard Holden pull the blind all the way down so it could release. I heard the snap of it start to raise, and I heard the whistling just on the other side of the window. But I had my arms around Nala. I turned us so she wasn't facing from the window. At the same time, I jammed my eyes shut. The blind whipped open. The whistling stopped. I felt Nala shaking in my arms. Don't look, okay? I told her, don't turn around. We were positioned so that she was facing towards the hallway and I was facing my window. My eyes were still closed. I felt her nod into my shoulder. I reached out with my arm, not holding on to Nala, and tried to touch Holden. My hand brushed against his arm. He was shaking worse than Nala. Holden, I asked. Silence. I reached past him and gingerly felt the window. Eyes still shut. The glass was cold against my fingertips, colder than it should have been for the time of year. I moved my hand up the window, searching for the string to pull the blind. The glass began to get warmer, and the further I reached, there was a gentle hum feeding back into my fingertips. I tried not to think about what might be on the other side of the window. Finally, I touched the string and yanked the blind shut. I opened my eyes in the dim of light leaking out from the kitchen. I could make out Holden, pale and small, staring at the now closed window. Holden, I asked again. He turned towards me and screamed. Everything became a flurry of motion. Lights sparked to life in the hall, then the living room. My parents' footsteps thudded across the hardwood floor. I didn't turn to look back at them. My eyes were glued to Holden. He was pale. He had bit his lip so hard there was a thin red line of blood running down from his chin. And he'd wet himself. Oh my goodness, Holden. What happened? My dad asked from behind me. I managed to swivel away from Holden and look back. He looked. I'd never seen my dad scared before, but I saw it that night. In that moment, an old, ugly terror stitched on his face. A parent's fear. Just Holden, he mouthed to me. I nodded yes. My dad looked out, let out a breath. He looked so relieved I nearly expected him to cheer. But then he turned to Holden. My dad's face changed. I wondered if he felt bad for feeling good that Holden was the only one that looked. There was a knock at the door. doors. I noticed that both of my parents held baseball bats that they must have taken from their bedroom. The knock came again, a little louder this time. "Please don't open the door," Holden whispered. My dad walked over to him, hugged him close. "We won't," my dad promised, still holding his bat. "Nothing is coming in here tonight." Thud, thud, thud. This time the knocking was loud enough to rattle the door. Holden screamed again, and Nala clutched her arms around my neck. My mom came over and knelt down next to us, wrapping my sister and me close. Thud, thud, thud. "Call the police," my mom whispered to my dad. The knocking instantly stopped. My dad looked over his shoulder at us. "Do you think?" He was cut off by frantic knocking that trailed off to a polite tap, tap, tap. "Police," something said from the other side of the door. The voice from outside sounded exactly like my mom, like a parrot. That's crazy. Oh my gosh, that's so scary. Like a parrot repeating the words back to her. "Police. Call the police." Tap, tap, tap. "Police." My mom pulled us closer. "Police. Police. Police. Police." "Please stop," I heard her whisper. "I don't think calling them will help," my dad said. "How will we know when they're the ones at the door?" The knocking came back harder than before. The door shook, then it stopped. After a long moment, I heard the knocking again, but it was coming from our back door. We all turned together towards the back door, but the knocking immediately returned to the front door. Front to back, back to front. Loud and quiet, then loud again. Suddenly, the sound was coming from both doors at once. Big, heavy blows like a sledgehammer. Then something started rapping against all the windows in the house, and then the walls. It was like we were living inside a drum with a dozen people trying to play at once. Or we were a turtle and something was attempting to claw us out of our shell. "Stop," Holden yelled. The knocking died. "I won't tell," Holden said, staring at the door. "I promise I won't tell anyone what I saw. Just please go away." We waited for nearly a minute. Then we heard it, a soft tap, 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 coming from the window Holden had looked through earlier. Holden started to cry, sobbing like a prisoner watching gallows being killed outside their cell. My dad held him, brushed his hair, but never lied to him, never told him things would be okay. The tapping at the window went on for the rest of the night. We huddled together in the living room for I don't know how long. Eventually, my mom tried to take us kids into the room. Excuse me, my boyfriend's coughing. We huddled together in the living room for I don't know how long. Eventually, my mom tried to take us kids into my room while my dad stayed to watch the door. But the second we moved into my bedroom, the knocking came back. So loud it was impossible to ignore. I was afraid the door couldn't take it. Oopsie. We went back to the living room and the knocking stopped. Only the tap, tap, tap on the window remained. None of us slept that night. The tapping stopped around 7 a.m. That's about the time the sun comes up here. We waited another 2 hours before my dad opened the blinds from one window. He made us all go back to my parents' bedroom first. I heard him open the door, then come back in. "Okay," he told us. "It's done." Holden's parents came back around lunchtime. My mom and dad walked Holden over to his house, and they all went inside for quite a while. Nala and I watched from the window. She stuck to me the whole day, right at my side, sometimes holding my hand. When my parents came back, they looked grim, but wouldn't tell us what they said to Holden's family. It was Sunday, so we spent the day together, ordered pizza, and watched movies. That night, everyone slept in my room. Nala and my mom in the bed with me. My dad in a chair he pulled over. There was no knocking that night, or any night since. We didn't see much of Holden or his parents for the rest of the week, but by Thursday, there was a moving truck in their driveway. Nala and I watched them backing up the whole afternoon after school. What sticks with me the most is how tired Holden and his parents looked. All three of them had the same pallor the street, I could tell something was very wrong. Holden and his family were gone before sunset. I remember what the original welcoming committee said to my parents when we moved in. Not everyone who looks at the Whistler dies, but even those that live have the light go out of them, and the rest of their lives are full of misfortune and a million little tragedies. I think Holden's parents must have looked, either to comfort him if they didn't believe, or share the burden if they did. I watched Nala some days, happy and young and alive, and wondered if I'd been slower, if she looked out the window that night, would I have looked too, to comfort her, to share that burden? I'm glad I don't have to find out. We still live in that house, in that neighborhood. We hear our whistler walking past every night. The blessings, the luck, the good things here are too good to leave. But we're careful, and my dad hides the key to the blinds very, very well. Not that I've gone looking some things you just don't need to look for. Oh my goodness, that was the end of the story. I wish that there was like an update, I guess, or like what did the boys see or something like that. What did the boys see? Like how do they go about